Hello, I'm Esther Gidou-Yuot. It's Friday, April 1st. This is Africa 54.
Ukraine strikes a fuel depot in the Russian city of Belgorod Friday, marking the first Ukrainian airstrike on Russian soil since Moscow sent tens of thousands of troops into Ukraine in late February. Aid agencies are warning that millions more are at risk of going hungry in Sudan amid spiraling inflation, reduced harvests, and the impact of the conflict in Ukraine. And in our entertainment segment, how performer DJ Ekua maintains a close connection to her Kenyan roots through music.
Residents in the besieged southern Ukrainian city of Mariupol are waiting on Friday to see if Russia will honor a humanitarian corridor that could allow aid into the city and allow evacuations out. Convoys delivering the aid and the evacuation buses were stopped Thursday by Russian forces. Meanwhile, Ukraine's president says he has stripped two top generals of their rank, the chief of internal security and the intelligence agency's chief in the Kherson region. A Russian regional official says two Ukrainian helicopters launched an airstrike on a fuel depot early Friday in the Russian city of Belgorod, 35 kilometers from the border, setting the facility on fire. The incident is the first time Russia has reported a Ukrainian attack on Russian territory. The video has not been independently verified, and the Ukrainian Defense Ministry is not saying if the airstrike was carried out by its forces. VOA's Jamie Detmar in Ukraine reports that Ukrainian authorities estimate that Russia overnight withdrew 700 units of equipment from the Kyiv region, moving them back into Belarus. The International Committee of the Red Cross says its operation to evacuate thousands of civilians trapped in Mariupol remains up in the air. Meanwhile, the war and its horrors go on. Joining me live via Skype from Vinnytsia, Ukraine, is VOA correspondent Heather Murdoch. Heather, how has this war impacted children?
Today we spent some time with families here at a camp that once was a school, and now it houses hundreds of people that have fled their homes. And we met parents and grandparents who said their children have been impacted deeply, even those that weren't injured in the war. One grandmother told us that her grandchild told her the night before they fled that she hopes that they can all fall asleep because she was afraid they were going to get hit and she didn't want to feel the pain. Other people said that their children, they have been displaced. One child even said that she knew. She looked about 4 years old and she said, I don't live here. I live in Kharkiv, but I'm here escaping the bombardments. The United Nations says that half of the millions of displaced and refugees from this war are children, and the impacts on their lives beyond physical injuries are significant.
So there's so much fear, Heather. There's so much desperation. What are local leaders telling civilians if this war continues for some months to come?
There are local leaders telling civilians to be prepared for this war to continue for a long time, and without a particular limit as to how long that will take. We met the mayor today of this town, and he said that the defense forces within the town, the local defense forces, are teaching civilians how to protect themselves and encouraging them to learn how to use weapons. I asked him if he personally carries a weapon. He said, yes, I sleep with a pistol in my bed. Other people have told us here, other local leaders have told us that they themselves are prepared to fight. If the war comes as far as this town, they say every civilian will be ready.
Heather, what happens when night falls? If you can briefly tell us what happens, since you are right there, you know how it is.
In many cities across the country, there has been bombings at night. Here, there has not been as much, but there is still a lot of fear on the streets. People black out their windows, turn their lights off, and there are sirens indicating that there could be an attack, as I understand, every night, as well as announcements telling people to go inside. So while this is one of the safer cities and host to thousands of people who have fled their homes, it is still a place where people are afraid.
Heather, thanks. VOA Heather Murdoch reporting live from via Skype from Vinnytsia, Ukraine. In western Ukraine, locals say despite peace talks between Russia and Ukraine, they are prepared for a long war. They say they will not accept a peace agreement that includes ceding territory to Russia, even if their leaders can eventually make a deal. VOA's Heather Murdoch has more from Ternopil and Lviv in Ukraine.
Here in Ternopil, a western Ukrainian city packed with displaced families, aid workers are preparing food, clothes, and other necessities for local war victims, and to send to the east, where battles still rage despite ongoing peace talks. Many say they don't want a peace deal that means giving up land to Russia, and they are preparing to live in a country at war for months or even longer.
We don't want these peace talks to end in an agreement that would be bad for Ukraine. We want to free our land, and for that we are ready to fight until the end.
Religious leaders in the area echo the popular sentiment, but they worry about the devastating impact the war has already had on Ukrainian fighters and civilians, including millions who have fled their homes.
War is about chaos and ruin. In the same way cities get ruined, a person gets destroyed inside. After you come back from the war, you can't be the same person.
Major cities in the east now appear abandoned in places, and western cities, like Lviv, are overflowing with displaced people, many separated from their loved ones.
My daughter and grandchildren are in Slovakia, my older daughter is in Kiev, and me and my son-in-law are here in Lviv.
She says she hopes the war will end soon because Lubava, who preferred not to provide her last name, like so many other farmers, needs to start planting soon if she is to harvest this year. Aid workers in Ternopil say they fear Ukraine could become frozen in an endless war. And while they may reject the idea of giving up Ukrainian land, some volunteers say they still support peace talks.
You always need to speak. Intelligent people should talk because human nature is designed so people can communicate. This is why we need to do everything we can to make a ceasefire.
He says when leaders negotiate, it mitigates the amount of violence on the ground. But other clergy warn that if a deal is reached, it will only be valuable if people keep the promises made in the pact. Heather Murdoch, VOA News, Ternopil and Lviv, Ukraine.
Russia is accusing Ukraine of carrying out an airstrike against a fuel depot in the Russian city of Belgorod on Friday, the first accusation of a Ukrainian airstrike on Russian soil since Moscow launched its invasion. For more on Russia's invasion of Ukraine, I'm joined live via Skype from New York by VOA Russia managing editor Misha Gutkin. Misha, you heard about this airstrike. What's Moscow's reaction, since this sounds like the very first one from Ukraine?
Yes, there was no official reaction from the defense ministry, but the spokesperson for Russian President Vladimir Putin said that this does not create comfortable conditions for further negotiations between Russia and Ukraine. And those negotiations, by the way, are continuing today, not in person, but by video conference. But that's the reaction we have. I might also add that Russian media is reporting that another small town, maybe a village close to the city of Belgorod, where this oil depot was struck, was also strafed, supposedly by Ukrainian forces. We don't have confirmation of that. And I might want to share some news that are just coming in. And that is, there was a prisoner exchange between Russia and Ukraine today, this morning. This is coming from Ukrainian sources. The Russians are not confirming it so far, but the Ukrainian sources report that 86 Ukrainian prisoners of war were released, and that includes 15 women. Heather.
Misha, you mentioned the negotiations, and they've been going on for a while. We thought probably by now there should be a ceasefire. What exactly is Russia's demand in these negotiations?
Well, Russia's demands have not changed. The official position is that Russia is demanding that Ukraine declare itself a neutral state, that it will not join NATO or any other military alliance, and that Ukraine recognize Russian sovereignty over Crimea, which Russia annexed in 2014, and also that Ukraine recognized independence of breakaway separatist republics of Donetsk and Lugansk in the Donbas region. So that's the official position. Unofficially, Russia has also been talking about demilitarization of Ukraine and denazification, and that the last point is very contentious because it's not clear what exactly it means. Does it mean that a regime has to be changed in Ukraine or not? I think Russians refer to it in a vague kind of manner on purpose.
Misha, thank you. Misha Gutkin is VOA Russia managing editor. Our aid agencies are warning that millions more are at risk of going hungry in Sudan amid spiraling inflation, reduced harvests, and the impact of the conflict in Ukraine. David Doyle has more.
2 years ago, a loaf of bread in Khartoum cost 2 Sudanese pounds. Today, a smaller loaf costs you 50, or around 11 US cents. This, resident Haj Ahmed says, is what our country has become.
If this measly piece of bread is £50, what kind of life can we have?
Currency devaluations and subsidy reforms in Sudan have driven up prices. Inflation is running at more than 250%. It's just one factor contributing to the economic turmoil that aid agencies warn risks millions more going hungry this year. Marianne Ward is the World Food Programme's Deputy Country Director in Sudan.
You know, last year we scrambled enough money together to feed 9 million people in this country. But now we've got 18 million in the, shall we say, the hunger zone. And we are probably looking at more or less the same amount or even a little bit less.
Sudan has been mired in an economic crisis since before longtime leader Omar al-Bashir was overthrown in 2019. A transitional government attracted billions of dollars in international support. A military coup in October saw that financing suspended. Erratic rains have also reduced harvests, and Sudan lacks the foreign reserves to finance imports as the conflict in Ukraine sends global wheat prices soaring. Sudan imports some 87% of its wheat from Russia and Ukraine, according to UN data. UN agencies are warning that rising levels of hunger threaten to further destabilize a country that already faces growing conflict and poverty, and regular protests against military rule.
That was David Doyle of Reuters reporting. Kenya's Supreme Court on Thursday stopped President Uhuru Kenyatta's divisive bid to make sweeping constitutional changes, which opponents say was an attempt to widen the presidency's powers. Kenyatta's estranged deputy and presidential candidate William Ruto says the changes would have led to an all-powerful presidency. If Kenyatta's amendments had succeeded, they would have led to the creation of 70 new parliamentary constituencies. Muslims in Niger are preparing for the start of Ramadan. The price of food is up in Niamey, and traders say insecurity, coronavirus, and the crisis in Ukraine are to blame for the price hikes. VOA's Yusuf Abdullahi reports, and Grace Oyenubi narrates.
Ramadan is a holy month during which Muslims worldwide abstain from eating and drinking during the day. In Niamey, Muslims are visiting markets to buy food to make their fasting less stressful. However, some say the price hikes in consumer goods is making their Ramadan preparations difficult.
Prices of all kinds of food items commonly used during Ramadan has gone up. Grains, sugar, cooking oil and rice. There is no food item whose price has not gone up. We are hoping that the government and traders will do something about it.
Insecurity in some parts of the country, COVID-19 and some government policies is likely contributing to the rising cost of living, according to some food traders.
Firstly, the security crisis has hampered agricultural activities, resulting in food shortages. And whatever is scarce, its price must increase. Secondly, there's the issue of COVID-19. There's also the new tax system introduced by government, and then the crisis in Ukraine. All these have impacted on food prices.
Even before Ramadan approaches, the price of sugar had gone up to about $11, and cooking oil too has become very expensive these days, because 1 gallon is almost $10, and in the case of rice, the price is not too expensive.
The prices of fruits and vegetables, whose demands normally increase during Ramadan, have not seen significant changes from last year, according to one trader.
So far, fruits and vegetables are not very costly. Tomatoes, peppers, onions, potatoes are now sold below the prices they sold during last year's Ramadan.
To provide relief to people during the Ramadan, the Nigerian government is reducing taxes on some food items, such as sugar, flour, and cooking oil. For Yusuf Abdullahi in Niger, Grace Oyenubi, VOA News.
Still to come on Africa 54, our entertainment report featuring DJ Ekua. We'll be back. Former Mauritian President Amina Gurib Fakim has been busy since her resignation in 2018 with a focus on youth and women. In a recent interview on VOA Straight Talk Africa with Heidi Adams, Gurib Fakim spoke about her efforts to push for more opportunities for African youth, especially women.
I think there is this awakening that Africa has to cater for its own youth. And and in fact, if you look at the age gap between the leaders and the young people, we are talking about an age gap of over 50 or 60 years in some region. So we need to address this. We also need to see that Africa is the youngest continent. So there is the gradual awakening. But again, it is an issue that takes time. I mean, look at, for example, in some of the prestigious institutions we have in many countries in the West. I mean, it's taken years to actually grow. But having said this, there are some flagship institutions in South Africa, for example, and these universities, they appear within the first 400 among the best in the world. So we have to actually keep on investing in that space, invest in our people, invest in our ecosystem, and also invest in the young people, because no one will do that for us. And this is the message I've been taking to leaders across the continent, is that we need to invest in our own people. It's our responsibility first and foremost. So this is the only time that when you create that space, be it as entrepreneur, be it as incubators, provide them with venture capital, provide them with the angel funding. This is the time when they will translate their finding, their interests, their inventions into becoming that entrepreneur, so that they can actually create jobs for more and more young Africans.
Ma'am, you co-authored an article for Brookings Institution in which you said that STEM is the key, and investment in STEM is the key to Africa's economic transformation. Please tell us what you mean by that, and why STEM?
I would add also one more letter to the STEM. So science, technology, engineering, arts, and mathematics. And then I would add another layer, we girls in STEM, girl in STEAM. Why I put the A? Because we are seeing increasingly, especially in the world of design, IT, where you need that artistic mind. Now, why do we need women in STEM? I'll just take one sector. I'll just take the sector of agriculture. This is the sector that is feeding the continent. We saw the problem of food security over the past 2 years during the COVID era. And I think if we look at agriculture, it's a $1 trillion business that Africans are sitting on. And Africa is a continent which actually is home to 60% of the world arable land. And why I mention agriculture, because it's something that people can understand very quickly, is that often the stereotype image that we have of agriculture on the continent is that woman with a hoe digging a very dry soil with a baby on her back in the hot sun. This is not agriculture. This is not how it's done in Africa. Granted that Africa's agriculture is 85% dependent on rainfall, being a rain-fed agriculture. So there are challenges. But I think if we bring in the technology, if we bring in the women who are empowered with the tools of technology, and for that to happen, she must have the modicum of training in the sciences at a very young age. So then she can become that entrepreneur, she can access capital, she can invest in the land and provide food.
That was VOA Straight Talk Africa host Hayley Adams speaking to Amina Gurib Fakim, the former president of Mauritius. Villages along Cameroon's northern border with Nigeria are forming militias to ward off Boko Haram and inform authorities about suspicious activities. These so-called vigilance committees were exclusively male until last year, when a number of women joined. Anzoaku reports from Mora, Cameroon.
Every morning, Awa Yusufa takes her bow and arrow and joins her colleagues at the entrance of a village. She is part of a local militia in Mora, a Cameroonian town not far from the border with Nigeria. The militia's role is to stop all strangers who enter the town. They check the visitors to make sure that they are not carrying explosives. Awa is one of 4 women in the 132-member group. She says she has to prove herself to be accepted.
One day, I was coming back from the farm and I saw a young girl who seemed strange and called the military. The military questioned the girl and confirmed that she was suspicious. The military asked me if I was a member of the vigilante committee. I said no. Then they took me to the chief, and the chief told me that from now on I could be part of the committee.
Self-defense committees emerged in Cameroon's far north some years ago to protect against Boko Haram. While these groups consist solely of men, some women have joined in recent years and take part in surveillance activities in the field. Other women, like Aja, not her real name, monitor women's cycle in their village to detect who may be helping Boko Haram.
There were women who communicated with their husbands in the bush. The husbands would send them money and the women would buy petrol to send to the bush. I found out that they used to put the petrol in plastic bags to make it seem like drinking water. They put them in coolers and transported them to Nigeria. Thanks to my information, the military raided the area and dismantled the network.
Militia members carry no gun, using only machetes, slingshots, bows, and arrows. They inspect bags to make sure that no dangerous objects are hidden inside. They all work as volunteers but would like to be compensated.
Concretely, we want them to give us, at the end of each month, at least a per diem as well as food, because we are no longer farming. We have farms, but we can no longer work them. It's really difficult to eat, even at home.
VOA interviewed the deputy mayor of Mora, who said aid is already being given to the militias.
They have been subsidized with a lot of material and financial support, and also they are being trained by the development partners who came and gave them support. All this is the work of the head of state, who has maintained good relations with development partners.
bonnes relations avec les partenaires au développement.
Mora officials say plans are underway to increase the number of women working with the village militias. Anne Zwanke for VOA News, Mora, Cameroon.
And now to our entertainment report. VOA's red carpet host Jackson Vungani introduces us to DJ Ekua.
Now, DJ Ekua has lived here in New York for her entire life, but she maintains a close connection to her Kenyan roots through music, and she enjoys playing the role of a cultural ambassador who brings enjoyment to her audience.
New York is one of the most diverse cities in the world. The Big Apple, as it is known, is home to millions of immigrants from around the world. It is also home to a large population of African immigrants who contribute to the city's vibrant cultural tapestry. New York is also home to Akua Musumba, a Ghanaian-Kenyan DJ that goes by Akua PM. Akua represents a shifting demographic and cultural landscape that is embracing African art and music as a way to connect with the continent while spreading it to new audiences in the diaspora.
I was inspired, because I wanted to introduce more East African music actually to the scene. And even through that, just meeting other DJs and like sharing music with them, and we share music with each other, you know, like just learning more about reggae from Jamaica and like really understanding that, and even understanding dancehall culture, you know, like there's whole fetes around that. So I think for me, I see music is definitely a language, but I think even more so once you become more immersed in it, like you learn just like the pockets that are underground and that just need to be shared with the world, and we can do that with music.
The pandemic dealt a blow to New York's entertainment industry with an impact felt by thousands of cultural workers. And spring is just starting, and DJ Ekua is looking forward to warm days like this one. That's when the famous New York outdoor parties and festivals begin.
We do party like Africans in that like we go for longer hours. So like in LA, places close at 2 a.m. So it's already a different sort of vibe. And I think depending on the setting, you know, we dance a little bit more, or we'll go, you know, just to show our outfits and things like that, you know? And so I think there is definitely a swag in New York that is unlike anywhere else in the world.
That was VOA Red Carpet host Jackson Vungani and DJ Ekua. And that's our show for today. From all of us here in Washington, have a great weekend.